Welcome to Charter Conversations. We are going to have a little chat about school facilities. Want to just introduce yourself and what your
Sure.
company does?
All right. I'm Lisa Anders with MCN Build. I'm a vice president there. I have spent more than half my career actually building projects as an engineer, and now I'm focused on building the business, bringing in new clients, and expanding the good work that we do. MCN Build is a community builder. We're based in Washington, D.C. We have offices in Baltimore, Maryland, D.C., and now the U.S. Virgin Islands. And we are focused on projects that are in service to the community. So, education, we're the largest K through 12 builder in Washington, D.C., and the largest charter school builder. And we also now are moving into healthcare and affordable housing because those are also in service. But I think the unique thing about MCN is that we really focus on expanding our footprint with the capital spend for that facility, meaning that we get really involved in the community. We build capacity for local businesses and get engaged in workforce development because we believe that just is a better economic solution. When we have a chance to spend some money to build a beautiful school, it also builds the community.
Hi, I'm Nikki Livingston with Studio 27 Architecture. We're also based out of Washington, D.C., although I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm the Raleigh office now. But we do a lot of community-based projects as well. That's really our focus. So a lot of K through 12 schools and some university work. But yeah, the bulk of our focus is really there, and then affordable housing, some multifamily housing projects too. But really anything that allows us to get in and collaborate with the community and offer something that's really going to change the neighborhoods and be a great opportunity to see good design, create better lived environments. So we find that to be really rewarding, and our process is very collaborative. We work with MCN a lot. We've done a number of schools with them in the DC, Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania area. So we really enjoyed the whole process of getting to know the leaders in the education facilities, and even sometimes we involve the students with workshops when we're, starting the initial process.
Monica White, I'm from Idaho, and I'm a charter school founder and leader, and I planned on building one school, and then Drew convinced me to build more schools, so now I am opening my fourth one in August. And, the facility side was pretty foreign to me when we started, but I think I'm getting it now. I think I've caught on, so thanks for letting me hang out with you.
Let's jump in with some questions, okay? Aligning design with mission. Topic one. How can the architecture of a school do more than just look good? Can you share some cool ways it actually mirrors some core educational values?
So Elevate is a pretty unique model because we're career tech ed focused, and we wanted everything wrapped around the trades, and we really wanted everything project based. And to do that, we took all the math, science, English, social studies standards, we mapped them with the career tech ed standards, and every single block a student goes through is done with all of those teachers. Nothing can be done in isolation. And so to do that, we wanted every space in our entire building to be a learning space. And so that was really a different approach, working with our architects and to meet those needs. Like we have 18-foot hallways with whiteboards down the middle, furniture down the middle, TVs down the middle of the hallways, everything like that. And then garage doors on every single one of our classrooms, because we want the garage doors up and everybody working and collaborating together, and kids move with what they need for the day. And so to design that was pretty wild. And the architects really had to bear with us. In fact, the other day I found our very first sketch and iteration from where we started to where we are. But just having somebody that will really dive in and understand what we wanted and needed for the children's experience was pretty paramount.
Great.
Yeah.
Do you want to add?
Sure, yeah. So a lot of the work that we do in the beginning is really ends up being the most crucial work in the sort of pre-design phase, where we meet with the leaders in the educational community, and we talk about what their program needs are, what their mission statement is, what their goals are. And then from there, we typically will develop what architects will call an adjacency diagram, which is kind of these cool little blocks where we'll sort of show to scale the different programmatic elements, the gym, the admin office, the different classroom sizes. And we'll really work with a push and pull, kind of almost like pieces on a board game, to figure out what spaces need to be close to other spaces, what spaces need to be far apart, the relationships between all the different programmatic pieces. And then from there, it sort of informs the actual three-dimensional form of the building. And I think that that's a really important step, because without that step, without understanding how all the pieces need to relate to each other, you can make the most beautiful building in the world, but if it doesn't function to achieve the goals of the school, then it's not going to last, and it's not going to get used efficiently. So we'll involve the client as much as they want to be involved, but in the community too, to kind of do the fun part of making it into a building. But that first step is sort of the foundation that's really required to make it a useful building.
That's great. And Lisa, in terms of, alignment of values and mission and during construction, do you ever let the kids be involved in any of the, the year, or do anything like that?
Yeah, no, actually, we like to get engaged early on when, Nikki's going through this process that she just explained. And it doesn't, I don't think necessarily most clients understand, oh, let's get it designed and then built, right? So when we're involved early on, we're absorbing all of that. We want to understand the mission. It's not just, oh, here's the drawing and build it. And during that process, I think it's important to involve the students. So, it's a learning opportunity for them. But certainly when we're under construction, we do host a lot of kids on site so they can, really relate why they need to learn math and these other things and see their own school being built. And we also, of course, tour other schools. In addition to just the students that are attending the school to see their school built, we take on about 25 interns every summer, and they get engaged in that experience as well.
Okay, great. I was thinking about the mission and the values, but if you think about the future of a school after you build it, are there, sort of the future proofing of spaces? Is there, in a world where everything's changing so fast, how can you design classrooms or schools so that you stay ahead of the curve? Because these students will be in there potentially from kindergarten for 12 years, 13 years.
The goal is to sort of create a building that's efficient enough to make renewable, passive energy solutions affordable. So the tighter your building envelope, potentially the less solar panels you're going to need, and that makes the building more useful in the life cycle of the next 30 to 50 years that it's going to be in existence. And while we understand that the size and shape of classrooms may change, and the way that the classrooms are placed adjacent to other amenities of the school, that can fluctuate. If we can create a building that's sustainable and has longevity to it, then it can be much easier to repurpose in the future, and it'll still be useful in that way. So that's really a goal that we have, and anytime that we can use passive resources, geothermal or solar panels or water collection, we do a lot of bioretention on the near the playgrounds, and that can even become a teaching element. We have some schools that really focus on that they kind of create these spaces in and around the play areas or in direct visual sites of the classroom, so the students can understand how the building is helping to alleviate some of the climate change.
In our original school, the very first school, we've actually had to do 2 remodels on it since we started, because we just didn't have enough space once we got to capacity. We learned as we go, and now we build a little bit bigger school, in the startup. So hopefully we don't face that. In fact, we're doing a remodel this year to add a bunch of individual offices that we didn't think we were going to need down on one corner. But what made us able to do that was we had the larger areas. So, it's kind of a push and pull. We can't predict the future, but we can, when we also build it so that if trades, because we're a trade school, if the trades within that community are going to change in 5 or 10 years, and all of a sudden a certain trade dries up or leaves town or whatever the case may be, we have built it in planning that we can repurpose the shops and do those kinds of things to be able to adjust for the next industry that's coming in that will serve the community better. So that is in our master plan, to be flexible in that way so that we can adapt to the changes of the community with that.
What are some strategies, from and just generally around the country that school leaders could adapt or take away from this conversation that would make their school maybe more sustainable or a beacon of sustainability at the further end of the curve?
We're seeing more and more schools really utilizing the green roof, and not just as a visual aesthetic, which it is, but in DC, lots are limited, real estate is limited. So oftentimes, if you are trying to make more outdoor space for outdoor learning classrooms, or even a soccer field or something, you can utilize the roof. And we've had a number of projects where that was one of the driving factors in the form of the building, to where we have spaces where the building will overlap a green roof and allow for students to come out and really use that space. But it also alleviates the solar gain in the building, and it allows for gardens that they can do. We've had a couple projects where the students had little herb gardens up there, and they can get up there and learn about all that, and make the outdoor classrooms a bit more effective and more active. So that's one thing we're seeing a lot more of. Also, utilizing the ground space. If you're lucky enough to have a playground on the ground and a lot of space around your school, then we do bioretention areas to help with stormwater management, and we tend to like to showcase those. It's not just a gated off area that the students aren't supposed to go. It's meant to be a learning in and of itself. So
We also see a lot of geothermal being used, and not on a school project, but recently we have an affordable housing project with Passive House. And I think what Nikki was saying about tightening up the envelope, which isn't necessarily what people think about for a green solution, right? But it does allow for less air passive through the building envelope, like, the windows, the skin, and then your building runs a lot more efficiently. And you can, it's more of a craftsmanship issue, like the quality control on sealing all the joints around. So it can reduce the amount of other energy efficient things that we normally think of as far as cost is concerned, by making sure the quality of the install of the envelope provides a tight building for you.
Early in my career, I was in the tech business, and tech was sort of booming and growing everywhere. And when I got into the real estate development business, I noticed that the technology component to a building was always the last thought. And I'm not sure it's changed that much, but I wanted to get from you guys how tech is being more and more integrated into school design, from your opinion, in your opinion.
I think we do see that more, but our strategy is also to bring on engineers and consultants pretty early on to kind of address those issues. And whether it's an issue of, they need a specific type of AV system that, is going to require a consultant for, or just being really conscious of like the lighting package. It's, more sustainable LED fixtures. And again, going back to the building envelope, having a building that's very efficient and doesn't lose heat or gain heat in the summertime can alleviate some of the pressures, and you don't necessarily have to have certainly less maintenance on the HVAC systems, but you can alleviate some of those things, and also with the geothermal that we discussed as well. But we see a bit more maybe in the security vestibules as well.
Security stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
What about E-rate stuff? Does that change over the years, or is that something to consider? Do you know what that is?
So E-rate, if anybody's not familiar with it, is basically the federal government's reimbursement program to make sure that all schools have the opportunity to get the technology infrastructure that they need at a discounted rate. Depending on, they usually use your free and reduced lunch numbers to do the math to figure out how much you're going to get for your school. So, in our first build, E-rate was kind of an afterthought. Now we have E-rate right in at the beginning, and with our owners reps, we're dialing that in and knowing everything we're going to put in, from where the switches are, where, or the line's going to be exposed or not exposed. We've even adjusted where our tech hubs are going to be within the school so that we can manage that a little bit better. So then, just from the day-to-day flow as a school leader, I don't want to spend my time worrying about technology stuff and if it's going right or going wrong. And like, if you're starting a school and it's your first startup, you get to do everything. So when you're building the facility, if you're building a brand new facility and you've got to lead the building, it's worth the time to really get into that stuff at first. Number one, it's going to cost you a lot more money if you don't forward think on all of it, because then you end up redoing it. And the second one is you spend a lot of time not really worrying about kids because you're worrying about trying to make everything work. And so we've done a much better job of getting ahead of the game on E-rate now and making sure that that's part of our team and part of our build. And the money's great, but then you have to go out to bid and you have to do all these things because you're the public entity. So you have to make sure everybody's talking, your entire team, from your architects, their consultants, your contractor, etc. So, and typically in our situation, we save about 50 to 60,000 per school by using the E-rate program.
I think sometimes it comes in late to the game too, because sometimes the client side, the school side, is going to do it themselves. Like in the case of DC schools, they'll have their own, it's called OCTO, their own facility group that is going to do that. And so, but I think it's better if it's right up front through the design process, because it can be integrated into and coordinated with the rest of the design and priced also with the rest of the construction, so that you're not reworking something later on.
Building home works all over the country. We see markets like DC and New York where it's $500-$600 a square foot. Green building, super expensive stuff. And then we also work in rural Idaho. What are strategies to sort of prioritize, spending so that budgets keep from ballooning, but you still create something amazing?
Well, I think it really starts with, like you were saying earlier, the upfront planning and really understanding what are the goals of the school, what's the mission, and to think a little bit forward. If you're going to spend this big capital dollar value on building a new school, is it going to last for, when I say last, I don't mean the structure of the building lasts, but I mean, is it going to work for the growth of your school over time? And have those conversations up front. And I cannot stress enough to bring the contractor on early, right? And work with the school leader and the design team early, because we are the ones really that have a pulse on the market of what things actually cost, right? There's a lot of historical data, but we all know since the pandemic, prices have been fluctuating. And whether you're in the DC market or a rural market, so right now I'm dealing with, I'm going to call it rural, but it's the Virgin Islands, right? So how many contractors are coming? So even though I know what the price per square foot of something cost, is the workforce there to do it? And if it's not, then that cost goes up, right? So I think understanding the program from the beginning, working with the design team, allowing the contractor to be in on, like, it should not be a scary thing to let us know what your budget is, right? Because if we know what your budget is, we can bring in alternatives, working with the architect. Well, why don't we use this mechanical system instead of that one? Or this one has a long lead time, it's not going to meet your. So just, to get back to your question about pricing and budget and being able to deliver a beautiful school within the budget, it's all about communicating and transparency and sharing of information so that we can be a partner with that. We're not the, despite what people think about contractors, we're not the big bad wolf. At MCN, we really want to help the school get what they want. We want the most bang for the buck. I mean, that's why we're here.
Yeah, Nikki, how do you, everyone sort of blames the architect for over designing.
Well,
But
our answer to that
how do you
is
consistently design schools for us that are $100 a square foot less than district schools. I mean,
Well,
substantial savings.
really the most important thing, which I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but our first and most important step is to really clearly define the scope of work as early as possible. And sometimes the client needs a little bit of help to decide what that is. And that's why the pre-design work and the adjacency diagrams and the analysis of the program becomes important, because what we can do are these little mini test fits where we can show different options. And each option will obviously be offering a savings here, but it's a sacrifice here. This option allows you this, but you have to sacrifice this. And doing those iterations will oftentimes allow the client to sort of eliminate priority, less important priorities, like objectives that they might have thought were going to rise to the top, actually need to take a backseat to this other objective in order to accomplish the overall mission. And so we really try to limit the scope expansion past the design development phase as well, because that's when you really quickly see, oh goodness, we're so far out of our budget that now we're going to have to value engineer to a point where the design gets diluted or the integrity of the design gets sacrificed. And that's not a spot where you want to be. And then like you were saying, collaborative all the way as early as possible. A lot of our projects are the construction manager at risk delivery method. And so they may be in on the very first meeting, hopefully they are, and offering suggestions on alternatives, from the beginning.
Right, because while you're going through that whole process of, maybe this isn't as important of a need as the other, and you're going through the process of showing different design alternatives, we're pricing that along the way. I mean, it's budget pricing because we don't have it 100% defined, but it allows for better decision making on choices because you actually know what the real market number, and we're somewhat at risk because we're saying we can do it for this, right? So you're getting sort of a commitment and buy-in from the contractor to understand that your design and your needs are actually going to meet your budget.
One of the things about Monica is that she is, as she mentioned earlier, you're in your fifth school now.
Yeah, we're just starting land on it. Yeah.
Maybe talk about how you've codified
Yeah.
or standardized some of the parts of your design and how that moves into the next project.
Yeah, so that's been really big for us to save quite a bit of money. Actually, is we've created the footprint that's the footprint, and we go with it. We might make a small tweak here or there, but to do that, even one of our biggest things is after every project, and even sometimes intermediately through a project, we'll sit with our architect team and our general contractor team, and I rely very, very heavily on an owner's rep. They cost a little bit of money, but I think they also save you a lot of time, headache, gray hairs, and money in the long run, honestly. But we'll sit with that team at the end of every project and debrief every RFI, every change order, everything, so that we can automatically build that into the next project. So we're not going back and making the same mistake twice. And for them to invest that time in that process has made a big difference there. But then when we codified it, we worked with Building Hope. I can't remember who helped us through that process, but we've actually got a booklet now on these are the colors, these are the lengths of the hallways, so everything's written down now, so that like if my architect were to leave me tomorrow, we've got the book that we could lay down and go, this is where we go and where we start and what we need it to look like. And so just having that in the replication phase, like don't reinvent a wheel if you don't have to. I mean, the building works, it's great, keep using it.
And that's really helpful. I mean, I know in the charter school world, in your case, you are replicating, and you can do that. In the public school world, it's great when a jurisdiction has an ed spec. It allows for the design team to already know, have a roadmap, and we can also price. It's not going to be some wild anomaly that comes into play. And any of those anomalies may be, the physical asset or the building footprint or the land and real estate you have to work with. But the program is more defined. And I think you can get closer and stay closer to your budgets when you have that.
Let's shift gears a little bit back to maybe some school safety stuff. It's a topic that is in every conversation. We've been sort of now hiring outside security consultants to review plans. what have you seen change over the last few years, or in terms of design, or what you're doing at your school, or what you're doing from a construction perspective?
Well, we, as a standard, need to develop the vestibule entry space to withstand, sadly, an attack for as long as it would take for the police to arrive. So that's sort of the standard. But we've seen a lot of really great advances in the technology of how quickly you can shut down the school. One button, dropping all the curtains, locking all the doors. The other big thing, and to go back to the adjacency diagram from the beginning, is to understand your sight lines. You know, the admin space needs to have clear sight lines, not only to the exterior of the school and certainly the entry, but also down certain corridors, because I know with some of the schools in the DC area, you really have to plan for how to quickly resolve conflicts between students. And you know, and if you design a school that has these little alcoves of places that are kind of hidden from sight, that can be a problem waiting to happen. So you have to kind of be careful with things like that. So.
Hmm. In terms of school, like one of the questions, this isn't really about active school safety when the school's up and running, but this is more of a question about school safety when there's a construction project happening around a school.
Oh,
Are there
right.
things that contractors do to sort of protect the perimeter of
Yeah.
a construction site?
We do a lot of schools that have phase construction. The building has an addition or it's getting modernized. It's an existing building, and you know the students are swinging all into one space while we're building out another space. So it's really important to, one, for their safety, not only just their physical safety, because that's what everyone first usually thinks about is physical safety. You know, you don't want a kid coming into a dangerous area, but also just separation of the workers from the students, in that sort of safety, and then just the health and wellness, right? Dust control. A lot of the schools that we work in may have a pre-K and K, and they have nap time. So then we have to be respectful of sound and noise. And so we really work a lot with the school to understand the actual flow of the day in protecting the students from that. And of course, you know, you have your perimeter fencing, and it's just really important to understand the drop off, flow of drop off, the flow of, you know, kids getting from their academic area to the exercise, whether it's outside or in the gym, and how we work with the school to facilitate a seamless, like, even though everyone knows construction's going on, we don't want it to disrupt the school day and the kids' experience.
Can I add something to the school safety thing? It's a fine line in this world too, because we're schools, not prisons, right? And so when you're in that design phase, it's really easy. Vendors from the outside, everything, they want to scare you. They want to give you worst case scenario of all this is going to happen and it's on your shoulders if you don't do it. Don't forget you're running a school. We fought hard to say we will do everything in our power to not let this turn into a prison feel. It's going to feel like every family and kid wants to walk into this place. So kind of a fine line there. Just be cautious of it. We still got to have a place that feels warm and open and welcoming. And be safe. I'm not downplaying the safety. It's just a fine line.
I think honoring local roots is important. So how can we make sure our schools honor local history and culture in its design, and what are some thoughtful ways to weave those elements into the building?
Oh, I've got kind of a fun one. We're still trying to work this into our original campus. It was actually, we bought it from this family called the Nishitani family, and the Nishitanis were in one of the Idaho had a lot of the internment camps during World War II, where people of certain heritage were basically put in the camps. And so Nishitanis ended up in Idaho because they were in the internment camps. Well, fast forward however many years later, when they got out of the internment camps, the ground that we built our school on, they used to build basically the Nishitani Gardens, and it was a place where they raised and grew produce and sold it locally and things like that. So when the Nishitani Family Trust agreed to sell us the school, we did a lot of recognition of the Nishitani family, and we've brought that into the school. And so I think it's really, really good to just honor anything that's a part of where you're at. And, you know, and obviously their story was a good story of struggle and where they came and how they became successful. So it ties into our mission as well. So we do some things like that when we can.
The first thing that's coming to mind is we just did an award-winning school 2 years ago. I think it delivered Benjamin Banneker High School. And when you walk in the school, well, first on the outside, on the metal panel, there's like an image of Benjamin Banneker in a subtle way. And then when you walk in the school, it has a mobile, I don't know, it's hanging from the ceiling of one of his inventions. And there's a lot just tied into how the building itself architecturally speaks to what he was about. Laid out this DC map. Even in the gates, it has the DC map on the gate. So it just really ties into what the building namesake is.
Yeah, there's lots of creative ways that that you can incorporate the history of the building or the place through wayfinding, which is something that you really need to plan for anyway, especially with schools. But we've found some great opportunities to incorporate mural maps or like you were saying with the local artists coming in and having that actually be the thing that guides the students towards the big amenity spaces and down the hall, and it serves as the visual markers for especially for the younger students who maybe aren't reading yet. If you follow the artwork down the hallway or you go to the red space, then that's where you need to be for lunch or wherever. But those can be really fun ways to incorporate color and art, and we do a lot of mural maps and stuff like that.
Well, thank you for coming and listening to us. Thank you guys. It is a privilege to work with all of you, and we're grateful to have you here in Miami with us.
And it's great working with you too.
Thank you.
Yeah.